Today on the Magic for Life podcast, we have Sean Malone, a serial entrepreneur who's owned 5 different businesses. He's taken businesses to over 8 figures in revenue, and he's battle tested and ready to change your world. If you're a serious entrepreneur, don't miss today's episode. I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the 2 things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm glad you joined me today because we have my mentor, my coach, my go-to man, Mr. Sean Malone. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Michael, it's such a pleasure to be here, man. Just super excited to have the opportunity to share anything that I can to help you and your tribe and everybody else grow. That's what we're about, right? So.
Awesome. Absolutely. And it has been such a fun ride along the way with you. From the moment we met to now, I feel like it's just been a cool whirlwind, so much education, so much knowledge, and a whole lot of cool friendships. And it's just been a lot of fun. So I really appreciate you. And I'm sure as we dig into your backstory and the things that you're all about, our audience and our lifers out there are going to be digging what you have to share with them. So I'm excited to have you here. And I want to kind of start by digging in, and in case my audience doesn't know you yet, we want to make sure that they know you really well. And so I'd love to hear your backstory, how you got from there to here, right? Because I see that cool one of many awards in the back, that cool 2 comma club, the elusive 2 comma club that so many entrepreneurs are after, and and all the cool things that you're doing. But how did you get started? What was kind of your journey to get to this point?
Yeah, well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I'll just kind of dive into where I started and how I got where I got, like, to answer your question. So it began about maybe before I even got into college, and I was just like, I had these dreams of being set on becoming a professional baseball player. I went through college and I realized quickly that I wasn't in the top 1/4% of all baseball players, and that becoming a professional baseball player at the highest level was going to be a really long journey, and it wasn't something that I was actually out for. So right as I come out of college, I thought to myself, well, if I can't be that person, how do I make a lot of money? So I called my dad and I'm like, hey, Dad, how do I make money? How do I make a lot of money? I want to make a lot of money. That's what I said to him. And he said to me, he's like, yo, Sean, you've got 3 choices. I was like, this is exciting. Like, what are my choices? I don't even know what's going to happen. He's like, well, are you a CEO? And I thought to myself, I was like, no, I'm like 22 years old, coming out of college. I don't really have those skills. Like, no, not really a CEO. And he said, okay, well, if you're not a CEO, are you an entertainer? I thought, well, I can't really dance or sing or rap or anything like that, so not an entertainer either. And he said, well, you better go learn sales. I said, okay, cool. So I'll go learn sales. So I got myself a sales job, and I went in my first day, and I'm sitting there, and my boss is like, all right, you got to go make some sales. Good luck. And he walked out, and that was like all the training I had. And so he gave me this big book of, at the time I was selling commodities. That's the job. So like sheet metal and electronics and plastics and some other things, to manufacturers who would like form products and then sell those. That's what I was selling. And so it's kind of a hard sell. It was like the upper echelon of sales when I first started, and I sucked. I mean, like literally I was so bad at the selling thing. I didn't understand. I didn't get it. I'd pick up the phone, and it wasn't from a lack of activity. Like, 'cause my dad always shared with me, he's like, yo, there's 3 things that you need to have in order to be super successful in your world. And I said, what are those things? And he's like, you got to have conviction, you got to have persistence, and you got to have consistency. So through my story, I'll share kind of where those came into my world. So making these phone calls every day, 40 calls a day, 80 calls a day, no results, not even booking a meeting. And this goes on for a period of like 4 to 6 weeks. And then my boss comes to me and he says, Sean, you better figure this out, otherwise I'm going to fire you. I'm like, oh, threat. My back's against the wall. What am I going to do? I go home and I call my dad and I'm like, Dad, he said he's going to fire me. What do I do? Greatest advice I've ever gotten from my dad. He's like, go to the library and read a book. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. so that's what he tells me. So I'm like, okay, I go to the library, I pick up the first book I found. It was a Tom Hopkins book. I love Tom Hopkins. I've actually met him. I had lunch with him. He's a wonderful person. He's trained over 5 million salespeople. And I started reading this book. And in this book, it's profound. It's stuff that I'd never heard or even thought of to think of trying before. And I'm like, this is exciting. And then I went back and I picked up the phone and I literally made my next call that next Monday morning. And my first call, I booked an appointment with this new profound material that I'd never even felt before. And at that moment in my life, I was like, this is where my conviction came. It's like, whoa, that felt good. It was a rush. It was new energy. I've never felt this before. Like, I'm going to master this. I'm convicted to become the best at this because I suck at it right now. And so that was kind of part of the motivation that I had. And that's where the conviction came in for me, is like, and I started looking and I thought to myself, everything is a sales conversation. Doesn't matter if you're getting married, doesn't matter if you're anything. Like, sales is the lifeblood of almost anything and everything in this world, right? So I became very convicted about this. And so I started investing my time into learning all these different systems and sales methods and learning all these different trainers, and ended up spending about, fast forward about 15 years, I'd spend $500,000 between me and my wife just on my personal education to get really good at communication, to learn things like NLP, neuroscience of sales, body language, all the stuff that is around communication and selling. And during that time, you can imagine I got pretty good at making deals and connecting with people, because it wasn't a lack of, discipline. Like, I was in there, I was doing the thing. And made some money. And I got to this place where I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And so I ended up investing everything I'd made from my sales to buying an electronics company in Las Vegas. And I moved to Las Vegas early 2000s. And I started with 7 employees at a business partner. And I had about, I had 47% equity in the company. And I was like, okay, I have this company now. I can grow this. I know what to do, how to do it. And over the next 4 years, me and my business partner grew it from 7 employees to 110. And we went from about 250,000 a year in revenue to just over 8.5 million. And I grew a sales force around me because I wanted all these other sales pros to continue selling for me. So I had 1,027 salespeople reporting to me at the end of 4 years. So pretty big business, pretty big organization. And I was selling business to government. It was electronics specifically. And one of my clients was Raytheon. They make like laser guidance missile systems. And of course, I didn't know any of that stuff because, like, I'm a simpleton. But I had all these engineers that were really super sharp, and I could kick a door down and get started in the conversation. And so I was out in California working with Raytheon, and literally my business partner calls me. He's like, hey, you got to get back quickly, cut my trip short, fly in, drive to the office. What's the problem? I sold the company, Sean. What? Like, what happened? Like, that's what happened. Like, that was the meeting that I walked into. And then in the next room was the people he sold the company to. So now you can imagine the rage, just like, right? You know what I'm saying, Michael? This is like, it's insane. I was, and I was a younger guy, so I had a lot of testosterone, more than I do now. And it was like, I was like, Now, I walk into the room, and I was like, it was so weird because it was actually a client that I had found like 3 weeks prior. It was so interesting how that even happened. Like, it was such a fast moving deal. And so I was like, oh man, this sucks. That's where I was. Long story short, it put me in a really bad place because that was, it was something I thought my baby, and I grew in it, and I thought it was going to be my ticket, and I knew how to do it, and I was really good at it. And ended up leaving the whole project because I was just like, I can't be there. I started drinking a lot, and that sucked. Went down to the bottom of the bottles. Anyway, that time I kind of met my wife, and luckily she's kind of like that ray of sunshine who pulled me out of the bottle, and she's like, I believe in you. Don't waste your life. Don't go to, it's a cliche to say that, but She kind of pulled me out and she's like, go do something else. And I took a job selling roofing material of all things. So I was like, well, I'm going to sell for a manufacturer. We'll see how that works out. So I picked up a job out of Ohio. My territory was Nevada. And I started breaking a few sales records. And during that journey, I was like, all these roofers are liars and cheaters and stealers. No offense to them, because there's some good ones out there. But man, I'm not that person. I'm not in that world. So at that point, I had to go to my boss, and I literally just set all the records for the first couple of years. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he freaked out, and the company freaked out, and they like tried to do all these moves to save me. And I was like, that's not my thing. About that time, my wife sees a Facebook ad. And I'm like, okay, Facebook, that's interesting. Let's like, how do we use the internet? Like that was always in the back of my mind. Like the internet's a developing thing. Got to figure that out. Climbed online, and we started this network marketing program. It was really interesting. We sold a medical grade water system. It was about $10,500. And we had this software that we started using. And luckily, because I'd had all this background in selling, I could sell things that were $10,000. I could sell things that were $500,000, $1 million, because that's what I used to do. And we started using paid ads to cold traffic. Literally, as Russell Brunson, one of my coaches, said, like, that's the very last thing you should ever do. That's the thing I started with. So I was like kind of backwards. And we figured out how to do the advertisement to get people into our system. But then there was this like big nurture piece that didn't make a lot of sense. And this is where my persistency came through. And, because conviction, I had it from that first call. The persistence came from when we started the online journey, and we're like, this is not working. We got to keep at it. We got to keep at it. We got to keep at it and just knock it down. And eventually we got it to where we had kind of our first templated prospecting system in place. And we took that company and we exploded it. We went from 0 to a downline of like over 2,500 people. We built an audience of over 300,000 people who were kind of listening to us just from the system we put in place. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. And they all came to us at this point. We just joined kind of the inner circle with Russell just about 4 years ago. And he's like, we're going and we're doing our inner circle presentations and all this thing. And we got our software cranking and everything else. And, or we didn't have our software company yet. And our whole tribe comes to us and they go, Sean, Melissa, Chris, man, like your system you're using right now sucks. You need a software. We're like, oh, okay. So we need a software company, but we do nothing about software. So then we went, and luckily we leveraged one of our inner circle relationships. And one of the things I always talk about mastermind groups, connection, right? It goes mind work, skill work, network. Network's one of the most important things. And literally inside of the network, we reached out and said, hey, we don't know software. Is there anyone in this group that does? And luckily we found somebody, and we ended up building a software company. And that's how we got that award right over there. The the elusive that you said. It was a $99 offer. We did $1 million off $99 offer in just over 10 months. So you can imagine the volume ripping through that thing. And then on the back end of it, we actually sold close to about $12 million of these water systems.
Wow.
But because we didn't process those through the ClickFunnels side of things, we didn't get the X. Otherwise, we'd have it.
Right, right.
Yeah. And so at that point, we're jamming. We have a software company. We have this thing cranking. Like I thought that was going to be the move. And we're in our inner circle presentation and we're doing this thing. And at the end, Russell, he says to us, he's like, he stands up like all good coaches should do. And he goes, Sean, I've been watching you over the last 4 years, and I got something that's going to hurt me to say this to you guys. You hate your client. You need to kill your baby. And we're like, what? This is insane. So Russell's here and he's all, okay, so Russell, how do we kill our baby? He's like, I don't know, man, but you're like a level 10 guy doing a level 2 thing. You need to make a change. I was like, just a tough nut to hear from your coach. Of course, we're coachable. We're like, okay, how do we sell this? Took us a year. Ended up selling the software service to one of our competitors.
Wow.
Worked out really nice for us. And during that transition, this is, I think it's about 2.5 years ago, Chris and I said, what are we good at? And we asked one of our other coaches, was Alex Sharfin. And he said, you guys are really great at sales. Yeah, of course we are. Because we've been doing it. We invested. We got the chops. You should go talk to these online entrepreneurs because I think they all have a sales problem. So of course we're like, okay, cool. This is fun. So we end up interviewing, just not selling anything, just going and asking questions around, do you have a sales problem? 99% of them did. And so we were like, okay, out of the 40, 50 people that we spoke with, we chose 5 that we thought would be really good. In fact, during those calls, several of them, they were like, hey, we're not getting off this call until we figure out how to work with you. Like that was kind of the response we got because we just were doing research. We picked up 5. We started working with them. And that was kind of the birth of our high ticket sales consulting agency that we started. And so we charge clients anywhere from 10 to 30 grand a month at that level. And it's really designed for kind of entrepreneurs that have a pretty steady business that's growing, but they want to build a sales team. And so that was our focus, is like, here's the infrastructure. We use like this thing called the S cubed code, which is you got to put the stability in place. So imagine like a rock in a river. The stability is the foundation. It's the systems, it's the operations, procedures, it's all that stuff. And on top of that, you've got systems, right? So like prospecting systems, nurturing systems, conversion systems, and then you've got speed. And what I'll say is this is like the speed of any business is always dictated by the capacity of the systems that you're building, right? If your systems can't contain the amount that you can bring to the table, your business is not going to grow. So it's important to focus on that. But as we're going through this, we showed these entrepreneurs how to hire, onboard, and train a sales team of sales pros, and then hold them accountable with compensation packages and then advancement opportunities. And so that's what we do for all of our high ticket sales consulting clients. And during that journey, here's where the consistency part came, because we didn't feel like we could scale. And that was a struggle for us because we knew so much, but we could only help this many people at a time. Like, that sucks. So we started like kind of looking through where the big like aha was for all of these entrepreneurs. And we found that it wasn't so much the sales problem, because typically if someone starts a business, they're like, yeah, I can go sell this thing, because they're going to have conviction about it, which is great. Maybe even have some persistence about it. But do they have the consistency to keep going and going and going, because they have systems that allow them to do that? And we realized that it wasn't the sales, but it was more so they had a lack of confidence in how to consistently put the right opportunities on a calendar every single day automatically, so they could just get into the selling conversation, so they could actually get people involved in the thing and they could make an impact. And so Chris and I discovered this as our like total aha moment. We're like, that's the problem we need to solve before we even solve any sales problems, because if you don't know if you have a sales problem unless you're in the conversation.
Right.
So from there, it was like, now we need to open up the second branch of Sales Centers, which is going to be our mastermind branch. And we're going to build a tribe, because we hadn't even started actively building our own tribe in the world until this part. And so we put together a really kick-ass program that really focused on 3 things: of giving the transformation to those entrepreneurs, which is literally, hey, if you don't have a bulletproof, robust, recession-proof prospecting system in your business, and you need one, right? Every business needs something like that. Sure. And so that's literally what we did. It's like, here's the method. It's like, this is the program. This is how you make it custom. But when it comes to prospecting, one of the things we got to remember is literally like, the only asset that entrepreneurs have to really expose is time. So we got to protect our time.
Right.
And so I think you can agree with all this. I'm sorry, I'm a little long-winded here in my story, but just full circle, it was, we give the system, we make it custom, and then we have an outsourcing of the labor. And so we built a mastermind that teaches that. And so that's how I got to kind of where we got to today. A lot of failure, but yeah.
Well, the great thing about listening to successful people is you can hear the setbacks along the way and how you utilized them and how they led you to the next thing and to the next thing and to the next thing. And it's really exciting to hear those things, because I think in so many instances as entrepreneurs ascending through the ranks of our dreams and hopes, it's easy to get stuck in the idea that, oh, this didn't work, it's the end of the world.
Totally.
And that's rough, So when things weren't working out, as a segue from what you just said, there were many times in that journey, from the moment when, you show up and your company was sold, and being in that moment to other setbacks along the way, or at least what seemed like setbacks at the time. How did you keep your emotions in check and keep pushing through that? Because those are some pretty big moments that most people have felt them or found themselves crumbling in.
So I crumbled. Like, oh, I didn't make it. Um, in any true entrepreneurial journey, there's going to be these things called cycles where you go up and you're winning, and then you hit the bottom and you suck, and you're up and you're winning, and then you suck again. Like, and it's ebbs and flows. It's kind of life and what I've experienced in my days. And so like the first thing when my business partner at the time sold that business out from underneath me without me knowing, like I was young, I was naive, kind of dumb, and I just didn't take some of the necessary precautions. It's like you always learn something from your failures. And so like looking back at that one, I was just naive and I was like, oh, well, it didn't work. I'm going to go do something else. And like, so that, but of course there was that period of drinking a ton, right? So I had, my catalyst was my wife pulling me out of the bottle that time, but I was at the bottom. I was
Right.
literally spending so much money on booze. It was disgusting. Right. And it was just a waste, but hey, it was what it was. But I think the hardest part of my crumbling journey was when we were at the end of kind of our software run. I was doing something that I literally wasn't passionate about, and it was successful. And so I was continuing to push down a path. And what I noticed in my world is it separated me from my power zone into this place where I really didn't want to be. And that triggered me going into burnout alley, to the point where I'm driving down the highway and I notice a big tree and I'm thinking about just doing this move and I'm done. Right. And that was a really, really, a really hard time in my life. And, my wife and I struggled through it, and we were at the bottom of bottom. And the thing that pulled us out the next time was hiring a coach. Sure. Hiring somebody that had gone through something even more traumatic, even more tremendously like frustrating and upsetting. And literally he comes to us and he's like, oh, this is no big deal, guys. Like, you just need this or you need that and you make this change. And we're like, well, it can't be that easy, can it? And it's, of course, mind work, skill work, network, right? In that order, it doesn't ever change. And he needed me to have adjusting in my head game. So like, I always use this term head trash. It's the stuff between the ears. And Michael, that's your specialty, and you know more about that than anyone. And once we're able to kind of tune that part, then I thought to myself, okay, well, my mind's in the right place. I kind of know what I want to do. What are the pieces that are missing from the equation? And then I went and skill work, learned those things to patch the gaps, and then build a network behind that.
Yeah. That's, it's so telling, because I hear that over and over again. You look at all the way up from the greats like Kobe Bryant, and it always comes back to that coach that comes back in. And I've had so many of those moments along the way as well. It's amazing, though, the perspective that you can gain from finding that right mentor, that right coach. And it's huge. It's such a valuable asset. The idea of what you focus on, you get. I love this idea. Anthony Robbins is kind of known for saying it, and so many of us have been through his stuff, and I love that. What you focus on, you get. So what do you think has been the biggest shift in the last like 2 to 3 years in terms of what you're focusing on to be able to be in the place that you're in now in relationship to all the years past?
Simplified focus. That would be the two words that I'd use to probably describe that, because most entrepreneurs overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5.
Yeah.
And so if you're in that spot and you're hearing my voice right now and you're thinking to myself like, man, I'm going to do all this stuff. In fact, I was just speaking with one of my really close buddies. His name's Dave, professional hockey player, 14 years, stud, went through a lot of Tony Robbins, like super high level platinum stuff. And he was just telling me, I mean, it happens to all of us. And so this is an example of a dude that's uber successful, has made millions of dollars playing hockey and then millions of dollars in his coaching business. And literally he's like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And I just picked up this e-com thing and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I'm like, holy cow, dude, you're giving me anxiety just telling me all the stuff you're doing. And so over the last 2 or 3 years in our life, I mean, even I was just like, dude, slow down, like schedule that out. Like, what's the one big thing you can accomplish right now in the next 90 days, in the next 180 days, maybe next year, that will move the needle enough in your business to where you feel really good and get fulfillment. So for us, it was just that. It was simplifying what we had. So we had the wrong model. We had a model problem. I wasn't into the done for you stuff, even though everybody has to start there so you can get close to your client. You got to understand them. You got to know what their problems are and how to intimately get in and solve those things. But literally, it came down to we were trying to do too much. And so over the last, I would say probably even more hardcore, like 6 to 8 months, we hired a coach specifically for the one thing of simplifying what we're trying to accomplish and helping us stay accountable to that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's literally like, hey, I want to become known as, we are the prospecting guys. Like that's the zone that we own, because I don't believe anybody, unless they've been in the game for a longer period of time, respects prospecting the way it needs to be respected.
Right. Well, that was huge when we met you. That was a big choice for us as well, is just to kind of narrow in and go, okay, wait a second. We had a lot of plans and a lot of things, that projects and things that we were doing, and we made the choice to simplify and get focused on the thing that we needed to, so that we can move forward in a more impactful way. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
The quality of our life is the quality of our communication. And I know you're huge into communication, and obviously with the massive amount of sales training that you've had and various other trainings, communication is huge. And oftentimes when people talk about communication, they talk about it in terms of outward communication, how we get our words out to other people. And yet there's this other side of it, which is how we communicate to ourselves, that is so massively important. And I'm just curious, what do you find yourself saying on a regular basis that helps you stay positive and stay in the right alignment, or in the zone, so to speak? Like literally, what kind of communication do you have to yourself?
So wonderful question. And not too many people ask me that one. So good on you for asking such a deep question. So it comes back to when do I do it? So just let me give some context on when I do it, because I think that's really valuable, right? So if you've ever studied Joe Dispenza or any of these guys that really know quantum theory or anything like that, one of the things that I found really, really productive in my world is that time when you just wake up and your brain state goes from theta to alpha waves. Like there's that transition, and most people don't even think about this, but right when you're waking up, you're in a place where you need to daydream about your future. And so for me in my world, like when I first wake up, I have now trained myself. It took me a while to do it, but I got to a place now when I first woke up is like, I need to future pace, think about the things that I'm trying to get in my world that I'd love to have. Like we're working towards buying a river property right now. We just pulled the trigger on another rental property for ourselves. Like those are the things I think about, like right when I'm coming out of my sleep, and like what I'm trying to project my world to be. Once I get up, I'll go take a quick shower, and I start affirmations, is what you're talking about. I start my affirmations typically in the shower all the way through till I finish brushing my teeth. And that's the time of day that I do it. And the reason I do that is because it's fresh. It's the first part of my day, and it puts my head in a space where I don't have room for the trash to creep in. And so what do I say to myself, depending on the thing that I'm trying to master at the time? Because I'm an eternal student of communication. I will always be learning. Like last night, I geeked out on a Jordan Belfort YouTube video until like 1:30 in the morning learning. I mean, he teaches straight line persuasion, even though it was for evil, never for good. I always say sales should be used for good, never for evil. He was on the wrong side, but it's good to know the wrong side so you don't use it if you're in that mood, right? So during, what do I say to myself? I say, hey, I'm one of the best communicators on the planet. And I repeat that over and over, probably 50 to 100 times. Say it aloud in the mirror, because I like the audible. If you hear yourself hey, I'm one of the best communicators in the world. Hey, I'm one of the best communicators in the world. Look at yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I'm one of the best communicators in the world. And say it till you're convicted and you believe it. Because when you believe it, what happens is the transfer of energy, again, quantum physics, is like you'll project that out into the world. It's like, hey, I'm really good at communications. Why? Because I put the background in, I spent the money, I've learned the stuff. And so I'm validated to be in that place. And so firstly, one of the things I talk to myself about, I'll say like, hey, I'm one of the best communicators in the world. Hey, the people that I'm trying to serve, the hungry business to business owners that need a robust system in their business are attracted to me. They come to me every single day. I don't have to try in order to grow my business because people are naturally attracting me. Those are the kinds of thoughts that I typically will surround myself with in that morning period between my shower and end of brushing my teeth. Yeah.
That's awesome. You know, along our path, inevitably, because we're human, these ideas of worry and specifically fear, which we're kind of hardwired with, come along through each of our situations and each of our experiences. How have you learned to manage and control those two emotions, in particular, worry and fear?
Okay, so I'm going to tackle fear first because I think that's an easier one, and then I'll do worry second. So um, fear, when you're born, I don't know if anyone knows this, but you're only like, there's only two fears that are programmed into every human being when they come out of the womb. One of them is the fear of loud noises, and the other one is the fear of heights. Those are the only two fears that are real fears. Everything else is fabricated from what you're hearing and the external influences that are coming into your world. So when you believe that the truth is there's only two fears, and it's loud noises and heights, and if you have a parachute, the heights one kind of goes away, and if you have earmuffs, then you can protect yourself from the other fear, then there are no fears. And so literally the slogan, no fear, because fear is projected from the external environment onto you. And then if you adopt it as a record in your mind, then it becomes your head trash.
Yeah.
So that's what, when I talk about fear, that's what I would share. So when I know that is like, I shouldn't ever be fearful of anything. There's this fine line between like fear and total excitement. And I call it the growth line. When you feel like you're nervous out of your mind, like, I don't know if this is going to work, but if it does, it's going to be amazing. And you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, this is awesome. That's the growth line. That's where everyone should live every single day, or at least a period of their day, because it's really difficult emotionally to kind of manage that line when you're walking it. It's tough. But that's the line that I like to play on, or at least touch that line once a day. When it comes to worries, sure, everyone has worries. I have worries every single day. Like, am I saying the right thing on your podcast right now to make sure that your listeners are getting an impactful message? Am I helping you grow your organization? Like, those are worries that come to my mind every single day. Same with my business, same with my marriage, same with everything else in my world. And it's just literally like understanding that what's the time that you've put in to build a system around fixing that or stopping that thing from actually occurring in my world is what I kind of focus on. So it's like, for example, in my marriage, if I want to have a good communication in my marriage, I have to practice it. How do I practice it? Again, from Joe Dispenza, one of the things he shared with me was so brilliant. He said, like, imagine your mind is this map and you've got all these locations on the map and you can go anywhere on the map at any time. And your conscious thought is a lantern that kind of floats around onto the area in the mind that you want to have focus on. And so if I'm trying to improve communication in my marriage, for example, I'm going to take that little light and I'm going to pop it right above my wife's head. And the only thing I'm allowed to focus on is my wife in her head. And that's allowed me to have laser point focus, like I'm doing it right now. Like, my light is right above your head right now. And it's a simple tool. And if you remember like, I think of like an old lantern, you go take anything with. Yeah, that's what I think of, right? Like, that's kind of what's in my head. So yeah, but that's kind of how I deal with worries and fears, is literally just like having clarity and focus and permission to like do those things.
That's awesome. Okay, we're going to go into our lightning round, kind of like John Lee Dumas, right? And do a quick lightning round. But we do our go-to emotions. And so pretty simple. I'll give you a category and ask you what your go-to emotion is when things are going well and what your limiting emotion is when things are going poorly. And so pretty easy. Not too rough, we hope.
Can you just give me the parameters of different emotions? Like, give me an example of a couple of them. Like, what are the?
um, it's pretty easy. It's just one emotion. Don't overthink it.
Okay.
Really easy. You got this. It's not hard. It's not
Okay.
hard. So
Coach me through. All right,
here we
got you.
go. Here we go. Piece of cake. So first category for your go-to emotions. When things are going well in business, what's your go-to emotion?
Joy.
Okay. When things are going poorly, what's your limiting emotion?
Hustle.
Okay. And in partnerships, when things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Excitement.
Okay. And when things are going poorly, what's your limiting emotion?
Worry, probably.
And in coaching, we had two categories, one where you're the coach and one where you're being coached. So we'll go with when you are the coach. When things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Fulfillment.
Okay. And when things are going poorly?
I would take responsibility for a lack of clarity that I've produced.
Okay. And when you are being coached, because you've had tons of coaches, right?
Yeah.
So when you're being coached and things are going well, what's your go-to?
I don't know how to even put that in emotion. Like pour gas on the flame. What would you call that? Like acceleration? Is that an emotion? I don't know.
Yeah. If you can feel it, it's an emotion. Maybe not clinical or academic, but that's okay.
I want to go faster when I'm doing it right. That's, I guess, how I feel.
Yeah. And limiting when you're being coached.
When I'm being coached
and things are going poorly.
Yeah. I just question internally, like, am I doing it right?
Yeah. Okay. And in your relationship, when things are going well, what's your go-to emotion?
Like my marriage or like a business relationship?
Yeah.
So joy. Yeah, definitely.
And when things are going poorly, limiting.
Again, just worry. I would say that's the one I do.
Yeah. And kids. How many kids you got?
Don't have any kids.
No
just
kids?
have giant cats.
Giant cats. They're your kids.
Okay.
Hands down. When things are going well, what's your go-to?
Happiness.
When things are going poorly and they've destroyed things. What's the limiting?
Probably a little bit of, I would say, a little bit of frustration. And then again, I try to take responsibility for that stuff. So like if I put them in an environment, then it's my fault, kind of a thing. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's the last category. Super easy for lightning round. And of course, it wouldn't be a day without being able to share with all my lifers out there the things that you're up to and what you're doing. So what projects or things you want to share with us, and how can our audience find you, get in contact with you, take advantage of the amazingness that is Sean?
Well, first of all, thank you. And I think the move is, if you haven't gone through Michael's program, do that first, right? Like that's the most important thing that you can do. Because guess what? You can call him the head trash man. He takes the head trash out. That's his game. He's a super genius at that. He's done more studying, more research, more everything you could ever possibly imagine in that topic. Like when you hire a coach for a specific problem or reason that you're trying to fix in your world or your life or your business. If you are unclear on what your message should be, that's why you need to go to Michael. Once you've gotten that part clear and you're like, I got all the head trash out because Michael the trash man came around and just sorted it out for me, then let's talk about putting a prospecting or robust growth system in a business. And I think that's the secret, because when you know that you have a consistent flow of opportunity, then you can move forward in having a conversation and getting better at that piece of it. So if they want to find me, I would say go through your program first and then come find us at the Sales Ascenders Inner Circle Facebook group. It's literally facebook.com/groups/Sales Ascenders Inner Circle.
And we'll put that in the notes below and in the description. So if you need to just get an easy way to click on it. It'll be there. And we sure appreciate you. And I'll tell you what, it has been so fun. I feel like I've known you for years, and really it hasn't been years, but we at Magic for Life are so incredibly grateful to you. We are indebted to your caring and knowledge about what we do and what we're all about. And I am so honored and privileged to have you here today, because you have changed our world. And I know that there are some people out there that you're going to change their world too. So if you're interested at all and you are anywhere near that space, go look up Sean, and he'll take great care of you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you. Rock and roll.
Michael, it's always a pleasure, my friend. You're one of my favorites. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, lifers, don't forget to get your free copy of the Every Minute book. You can find it at everyminutebook.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.